Hi everybody, welcome to the History of the World Part 2 Session Report. Please note that this playthrough features a few alternate rules explained in my Part 1 video, as well as expansion epochs described in my formal review. Okay, so we left off at the start of Epoch 5, but before we begin, I have to mention a couple of points of order. First, a viewer named Eberchondrel6603 noticed a scoring error that I made in Part 1. I had the Maurya Empire scoring 9 points for land in India when they only should have scored 6 points. So we begin by rolling back green score by 3 points to start the new chapter of the story. Voila! I appreciate the feedback. It means people are watching. I also noticed I'm missing a scoring plaque for South America. I can't find it right now, so despite what you see on screen, it should be a 1, 2, 3 territory for Epoch 5, and I'll keep record of this off screen. So turn 5 represents 750 AD to 1350 AD, the twilight of the Dark Ages right up until the dawn of the Renaissance. In Epoch 5, all previous land values remain stable. However, we now see the emergence of North and South America, Eurasia, and Nippon as minor scoring territories. The empire draws went as follows. Mustard drew the Holy Roman Empire and passed it to Lady Lavender. He redraws the Chola, so this was the first time we've seen a redraw backfire, and it could not have come at a worse time for Mustard. Oh well. Next, Olive drew the Mongols. She kept them, of course. Scarlet then picked the Franks and passed them to Mr. Green, but like Mustard, her redraw fails to yield a better power, and she gets stuck with the Vikings. So it's either going to be the Seljuk Turks or the Sung Dynasty for Mrs. Peacock. And of course she draws the Turks. So no Sung Dynasty this game. Once again, everyone will have to collaborate against Mrs. Peacock's blue civilizations, otherwise she might run away with the lead. Mr. Green is up first with the Franks, and he will play Pestilence in the Mekong Delta in the Khmer capital of Isenapura. He will contest the West Med. From northern Gaul, he will take Albion, move through the Lower Rhine, and attack the Goths in Central Europe. He will then attack the Goths in Central Massif, pass through the Pyrenees to hopefully kick the Romans out of Western Iberia. Pestilence takes hold in the Mekong and spreads into the Xinjiang region of China. 2 Khmer territories are affected, including the capital of Isenapura. Still, it wasn't a great turn for the Franks. They lost 2 armies fighting in Central Europe, and they lost a navy in the West Med, but at least they destroyed the Roman fleet too. They defeated 2 Goth armies across northern and southern Europe, but they had to cancel the march into the Pyrenees due to excessive losses. They could not effect scoring with their last army, so they decided to double strength Aachen, their capital. Charlemagne gets to build a monument. Green scores 1 point presence in North America, 1 point presence in South America, 3 points presence in Southern Europe, 4 points dominance in Northern Europe, 3 points presence in the Middle East, 6 points dominance in India, 2 points presence in Southeast Asia, 20 points for land, plus 7 more points for cities and monuments, 27 points total for a new grand total of 89. It's Miss Scarlet's turn with the Vikings. She only has quality late game cards, so no card play from her this round. Her mission is to establish presence in North America, Great Lakes region to be exact. Next, she will expand south into the Baltic seaboard and then into the Dnieper to gain presence in Western Eurasia. From this point, the Vikings will launch an attack south into Danubia against the Goths. If successful, they'll try to get over the Balkan Mountains to get into southeastern Europe. Not a lot of action with the Vikings. They lost 1 battle against the Goths, but they were successful breaking into the Balkans, although they had nothing left after that. They defeated 1 Goth army and 1 Roman army. They score 1 point presence in North America, 2 points presence in Northern Europe, 1 point presence in Eurasia, 2 points presence in Southeast Asia, 3 points presence in Southern Europe, 3 points presence in the Middle East, 8 points for the clean sweep of North Africa, 20 points total for land, plus 5 more points for cities and monuments. That's 25, plus 61 for a new grand total of 86 points. It's Lady Lavender's turn with the Holy Roman Empire. She's going to play a great leader card, Otto the Great. Never really heard of him before. Otto has a small army though, considering he has to deal with really tough terrain. Regardless, he's headed south through Dalmatia into the Pindus to take out Pella, the former Macedonian capital, then further south again to sack Athens and finally to take Crete, if at all possible. If there's anything left, Holy Roman Empire will turn west to make an attempt on Charlemagne's capital in northern Gaul. Otto had a tough go of things as expected. The Holy Roman Empire lost 3 armies fighting the old Romans in the Pindus and Morea. Ultimately, Lady Lavender's leader destroyed both Pella and Athens and captured Crete after all. The Holy Roman Empire also destroyed 1 Goth army and both Frankish armies that were protecting Charlemagne's capital to the west. Unfortunately, losses were such that Aachen became an open city after the battle. There are no armies left for its capture. And so Lady Lavender scores 2 points for dominance in North America, 2 points presence in Northern Europe, 6 points dominance in Southern Europe, 3 points presence in the Middle East, 3 points presence in India, 2 points presence in Southeast Asia, 6 points dominance in China, and that's 24 points for land, plus 9 additional points for infrastructure and boats, 33 points for a new grand total of 95. It's Colonel Mustard's turn with the Chola. He chooses not to play a card this round. He'll save better cards for later rounds. The Chola want to dominate in India. They will expand into Western Ghats, then head north. They want to capture the Gupta capital in the Eastern Deccan, then go up through the Ganges Delta before turning east into the Irrawaddy region of Southeast Asia, where they hope to at least establish presence. The Chola had a perfect turn. They didn't lose a single battle. They just rolled over 2 Khmer armies, 1 Gupta army, and they eliminated the last of the old Han dynasty from the game by taking the Malayan Peninsula. They even occupied the open city of Isenapura. The Chola leader, Raja, builds a monument in Tanjore. Mustard scores 2 points presence in Northern Europe, 3 points presence in Southern Europe, 1 point presence in Eurasia, 3 points presence in China, 4 points dominance in Southeast Asia, and 6 points dominance in India, 19 points for land, plus 7 points for infrastructure, 26 points total added to their 53 equals a new grand total of 79, and that was actually a good turn for yellow. It's Mrs. Peacock's turn with the Seljuk Turks. She has to play an Epoch 5 Minor Empire Fujiwara card in Nippon. She plans to expand south out of the Turanian plain with the Turks into both the Middle East and India. She will focus on 2 of her enemies, Mr. Green and Olive. In one direction, she wants to head south through Zagros and end up in the lower Tigris. She wants to take Anatolia to the west and then the entire western half of India proper. She will leave a southern Eurasian option open in case everything else goes according to plan. But we'll see what happens. So that turn became a total bloodbath in the Middle East. The fighting was so costly, the Seljuk Turks had to cancel their plans in southern Eurasia, and they didn't even make it into India. They took 40% casualties in the Middle East. However, they did manage to destroy 2 Macedonian armies, 1 Sassanid, 1 Aryan, 1 Hun, and 1 Marian army. Seljuk Turks actually destroyed 3 different civilizations. The Sassanids, Aryans, and Macedonians all went extinct. Peacock scores 3 points presence in Southern Europe, 6 points dominance in the Middle East, 1 point presence in Europe, 4 points for total control of Nippon with Fujiwaras, 14 points for land plus 6 points for ships and infrastructure, 20 points total for a new grand total of 98. This is still enough to maintain the lead, it looks like, but the large gap is now gone. Olive rounds out Epoch 5 with the Mongols. She has to play Migrants Africa this turn, otherwise the opportunity will go stale. Olive isn't going to settle for anything less than sweeping the entirety of Eurasia and Nippon. Beyond that, the plan is simple. Establish a toehold in as many other regions of the map as possible, even if it means getting over the Great Wall or crossing the Kush Mountains. Not only will she have to do a lot of fighting, she will also have to cover a lot of empty territory like the Eastern Steppes and Manchurian Plains. And I can't wait to see what happens. This was another bloody, chaotic turn, although what else would you expect from the Mongols? Genghis Khan swept Eurasia and Nippon with little difficulty. It was only after the Mongols started to fight inside China and assault the Tang capital of Chang'an did they really start to rack up combat losses. They also ran into substantial trouble in eastern Anatolia. In the west, Mongol expansion reached only as far as the Baltic seaboard. Overall, they lost 5 armies. However, they did defeat 3 Khmer, 2 Turk, 2 Viking, 1 Tang, 1 Sung Nu, army, they actually went out of their way to terminate the Sungnu Empire. Olive gets 2 points presence in Northern Europe, 4 points for sweeping Eurasia, 4 points for conquering all of Nippon, 3 points presence in the Middle East, 3 points presence in India, 3 points presence in China, 19 points for lands, and just 3 points for infrastructure, 2 monuments in 1 city. 22 points total for a new grand total of 83. Although Mrs. Peacock draws her 3rd preeminence token, overall the total scores have tightened up. I think she'll be hard-pressed to hold on to any sort of lead, at least after the next round. Much of the significant action occurred in the latter half of Epoch 5. This is where we saw the Chola kill off the Han dynasty, the Seljuk Turks finished off the Sassanids, Aryans, and Macedonians, and finally the Mongols extinguished the Sungnu. On to the next chapter. Welcome to Epoch 6, 1300 to 1550 AD. This is a fun round to play because we start to see a couple of emergent European powers with capacities to stake meaningful claims in the New World. Player minis look like conquistadors. Land values change slightly. The Middle East regresses 1 step. Northern Europe becomes more valuable, as does South America. Sub-Saharan Africa begins to score. Player draws went as follows. Colonel Mustard drew Spain and kept the card. Olive drew the Timurids and passed off to Lady Lavender. She redraws the Muggles, so it's a minor upgrade for her. Next, Scarlet drew the Ottomans. She kept them, of course. Mr. Green then picked Portugal and kept them. And Peacock finally drew the Incas Aztecs. With nobody left to pass off to, she had to take the card. We discovered there will be no Ming dynasty this round, and this is the 2nd epoch in a row that sees no great empire emerge in China. And this benefits Lady Lavender immensely, as her Tang dynasty will likely go unchallenged again in the region, which has now turned into a backwater of sorts. So this is surprising. With no Ming dynasty, Lady Lavender starts off Epoch 6 with the Timurids. She is not going to play any cards this round. She only has lesser events left, and none of them are particularly useful, at least not this turn. Her goal is to push south into the Middle East to establish presence in the region. She also wants to push north through the eastern steppes so she can get over the Great Wall at the Hui River. From there, she can work to remove the Mongols from China. If everything goes according to plan, Lavender is poised to score a ton of points this round. Wow, that was a catastrophe for the Timurid Emirates. They lost 5 of 8 armies in combat. They lost 3 armies just trying to get over the Great Wall, and they couldn't even do it. All they managed to do in the end was defeat 1 Mongol and 1 Hun army in Eurasia. At least they captured Attila's monument in the western steppe. It was a truly awful showing. Still, Lavender should score well this round due to her past successes. She scores 2 points dominance in North America, 3 points presence in Northern Europe, 6 points dominance in Southern Europe, 1 point presence in Eurasia, 3 points presence in India, 2 points presence in Southeast Asia, 6 points for dominance in China. That's 23 points total for lands, plus 11 points for cities, boats, and monuments. That's 34 points for round 6 for a new grand total of 129. It's Mrs. Peacock's turn with the Incas Aztecs. She has to play a crusade card this epoch. As far as her active empire is concerned, it's the most unusual empire card in the entire game. Player gets 2 treasure cities with 1 opportunity to expand in each of the Americas. The most anyone with this card can hope for is dominance in either area. The good news is that Cuzco and Tenochtitlan are very remote, and it takes significant effort by other players to pull them down. Mrs. Peacock's Crusaders lose 2 armies in combat. They fail to take the Shatz Plateau, but they do kick the Arabs out of Palestine and take possession of the land. Other than that, the Incas Aztecs establish dominance in the Americas as expected. Peacock scores 2 points dominance in North America, 4 points dominance in South America, 3 points presence in Southern Europe, 4 points dominance in the Middle East, 13 points for lands, plus 9 points for cities, monuments, and ships, 22 points for round 6 for a new grand total of 120. This is not enough to pass Lady Lavender on the point track. It looks like we finally get to see a new leader this epoch. Miss Scarlet has the next go with the Ottoman Turks. She will play elite naval units as she plans on taking the Eastern Med away from Mrs. Peacock. Scarlet wants to push south into the Middle East only as far as Zagros to gain dominance in the region. The main effort, however, will be directed against Northern Europe by way of the Black Sea and the Dnieper. She wants Charlemagne's open city, and she wants to capture the old capital city of the Holy Roman Empire. After establishing dominance in Northern Europe, she plans to push into Southern Europe with whatever is left. Miss Scarlet did a lot of damage with the Ottomans. It was like whenever she got bad rolls, her opponents rolled even worse results. She took the East Med. She met her objectives in the Middle East without losses. She marched through Northern Europe and encountered stiff resistance in the Baltic seaboard and Lower Rhine. She lost 3 armies fighting in Northern Europe, in fact, but that was it. She took her 2 cities in the north and punched south over the mountains into Danubia. But at that point, she did not want to risk further combat, so she decided to double strength her capital, Brusa, in western Anatolia. Her leader, Mehmed II, gets to construct a monument. Surprisingly, the Ottomans did not extinguish any legacy empires, but they did defeat 1 Roman navy, 3 Mongolian, 2 Holy Roman Empire, 1 Frank, and 1 Seljuk Turk army in battle. Scarlet scores 1 point presence in North America, 8 points still for sweeping North Africa, 3 points for presence in Southern Europe, 6 points for dominance in Northern Europe, 1 point for presence in Eurasia, 4 points for dominance in the Middle East, 23 points for lands total, plus 13 more points for cities, monuments, and ships. This is 36 points total for Epoch 6, for a new grand total of 121. This is enough for second place, 1 point ahead of Mrs. Peacock. Mr. Green is up next. He has Portugal. Portugal is a fun empire to play because it's the first time we get to see a power teed up to make serious inroads into the New World. They aren't particularly large, so they have difficult choices and options to consider. Green doesn't have good cards either for this round, so whatever happens, it won't involve any intangible advantages. Before crossing the Atlantic Ocean, Portugal will at least try to win dominance in southern Europe by taking the mineral territory of southern Iberia. That would also kick the Arabs out of southern Europe once and for all. After Green makes landfall in Brazil, he will attempt to capture the Incan capital and occupy the rest of South America. If the Portuguese run into difficulties crossing the southern Andes Mountains, they will abort the New World venture and save 1 army to claim southern Africa. The one thing that could thwart Portugal's grand ambitions actually happened. The Arabs fought hard in southern Iberia. The Portuguese lost an army fighting in Europe, which meant less resources for the New World. The overall strategy, therefore, had to change on the fly. Manuel I actually canceled the operation against the Incans, and this was a huge disappointment. As a compromise, he elected to arm his navy in the Atlantic Ocean and claim the unoccupied southern tip of Africa for Portugal. Manuel I builds a monument in Lisbon to celebrate partial colonization of the New World. Portugal only defeated 1 Arab army in battle, and this was in southern Europe. Interestingly enough, however, just by emerging as a new power based out of western Iberia, Portugal finally retires the Romans from the game. Mr. Green scores 1 point presence in North America, 4 points dominance in South America, 1 point presence in Africa, 3 points presence in Northern Europe, 6 points dominance in Southern Europe, 3 points presence in India, 2 points presence in Southeast Asia. That's 20 points for lands, plus 6 points for cities, ships, and monuments. 26 points total for a new grand total of 115. It's time for Spain, controlled by Colonel Mustard. I have to mention a minor correction before I start, though. I noticed the Mayan capital of Tikal shifted out of position at some point. I had it incorrectly located in Guyana Highlands, so I moved it back to its proper spot in Central America. Okay, so Spain will now play 2 cards, a Great Leader card, Charles V, and Black Death, which is a mandatory play for Epoch 6. Mustard will target China and Eurasia with the plague because these are large areas where he isn't. Mustard is going to attempt to do what Portugal couldn't do. With Spain, he's going to try to capture the treasure cities of the New World once and for all. This time, things will be different. Spain is more powerful than Portugal by 1/3, and they will also have a great leader. On the other hand, they will have to contest the Atlantic Ocean before they even get to the New World. The other main difference will be that Spain will make landfall in North America, in Appalachia to be exact, where the landing will be uncontested. From there, Spanish conquistadors will press west, then south through rugged terrain, over mountains all the way, against the Aztec, Mayans, and Incas. The mission promises to be bloody and costly, but Mustard is committed. Worst case scenario, we'll see Spain cancel South America and settle for the capture of Lisbon in Europe. Let's see what unfolds. The Black Death had no significant effect in China. In Eurasia, it was a different story. One Mongolian army died on the Manchurian Plain, and two Timurid Emirate armies perished on the steppes of Eurasia. In the New World, Spain had one of the most successful turns we've seen in a while. They only lost one army against the Incans in the northern Andes. They accomplished all of their objectives. They captured Lisbon in southern Europe, and they bagged all of the treasure cities of the New World. And they swept all of South America. Spain defeated one Portuguese navy, three Portuguese armies, two Mayan, two Aztec, and two Incan armies. Spain actually captured all of the large native civilizations of the New World. Colonel Mustard scores 8 points for sweeping South America, 2 points for dominance in North America, 3 points for presence in Northern Europe, 6 points for dominance in Southern Europe, 6 points for dominance in India, 4 points for dominance in Southeast Asia, that's 29 points for lands, 15 more points for cities, ships, and monuments, 44 points total for round 6, for a new grand total of 123. That's good enough for second place. Olive's turn with the Muggles will wrap up Epoch 6. She chooses to play a disaster card. She decides to use it on Lady Lavender's Legacy Tang, Dynasty capital of Chang'an. And she has a few other good options for a second disaster site. So she'll probably just use a random die roll to help her decide where to locate it. Somewhere in Palestine, Mecca, or the Ottoman capital of Brusa are all on the table. Anyway, as far as the Muggles are concerned, it's the conquest of India that's being proposed. Move south and west from Delphi. There will be tough terrain and fighting and losses to be sure. If they could capture Tanjore and kick Mustard's Chola out of India proper, and finally exterminate the Maurya, then they will cross the Palk Strait and take Ceylon from the Tangs. A disaster hits Chang'an, the third one in the game to occur in China, and a random die roll determined a disaster also destroyed the fortress city of Jerusalem in Palestine. Okay, so speaking of disasters, we hit a new low in terms of empire effectiveness. The Muggles were just awful. They only captured the Ganges Delta and eastern Deccan. They were slaughtered by the Maurya and the Chola. They lost 7 armies in combat and only defeated 2 Chola armies. The old Gupta city of Pataliputra went up in flames, along with the Mughals, who were completely unable to deal with the difficult terrain, protecting the western Deccan, for example. This is where they suffered their most costly and embarrassing defeat. This result was precisely not what Olive needed. Anyway, Olive scores 2 points for dominance in Africa, 2 points for dominance in Eurasia, 6 points for dominance in India, 3 points presence in China, 4 points for sweeping Nippon, 17 points total for lands, 4 points for cities and monuments, 21 points for Epoch 6 for a new grand total of 104. At the end of Epoch 6, Lady Lavender gets her first preeminence token, and this round was definitely interesting. We have a new leader and a tighter race overall, with just one trailing side now, and it is understandable why Olive fell behind. The Muggles were a huge disappointment this round. The highlight of Epoch 6 was Spain, of course. They put Colonel Mustard right back in the game with a great New World campaign. There were a couple of other noteworthy aspects to Epoch 6. One was how China became a total backwater area with no emergent empire for the second turn in a row. And finally, it was amazing to me that only the Romans, Mayans, Incans, and Aztecs passed into the Shadow Realm this turn. Ultimately, the Portuguese and Spanish did most of the lasting damage. At least that aspect of the game wasn't a surprise, I suppose. So this will conclude the History of the World Part 2 session report. I will come back with Part 3, the conclusion of the game, as soon as possible. It will include Epoch 7 and the expansion Epochs 8 and 9. Originally, I wanted this just to be a 2-parter, but it's taken me a lot longer to get through the game than I thought it would. But on the other hand, having way more fun with this than I anticipated, and that's all that matters. So thanks for watching, and stay tuned for the conclusion.